Hello, my name's Simone and I'm a counselling psychologist. So many of you got in touch with me following my posts about defensiveness, asking how do I stop being defensive, which I firstly want to say, that's no admission of failure. It takes a lot to acknowledge your own defensiveness, and it touches me very deeply that there's so many people who are like, I might be the problem, help. Because what you're saying is, I want to be reached, and that's really important. So let's start by thinking about what defensiveness is. I'm just going to kind of shoot from the hip here. Defensiveness is a kind of an exquisite sensitivity to rightness. It's quite black and white. It's quite rigid in its strategy. But here's the thing. Arguing over memory, psychologically speaking, is a dead end. It's a losing strategy. Memory is very subjective, and two people can argue over the same events and actually they can have a very different experience because we like to think we're very logical as humans. We're not. We're flesh bags of emotion. And we like to think that we're conscious of what leads us into our actions. We're not. We're all operating from old wounds. So as Jung says, you better find out you're unconscious, otherwise it'll drive you off a cliff. That's a bit of an ad lib there. So defensiveness is an exquisite sensitivity to wrongness. And it's a kind of nervous system that is hardwired for a quick, fast twitch, hot reaction to defend against the potential to be wrong, bad, disappointing, or not good enough. So something about the person who's being defensive has, they have some kind of sensitivity from the past to being essentially wrong or bad. So it's the shame piece working again. So what you have to do is two things. You have to slow everything right down, and you have to dial down that rightness, because there's a phrase in relationship therapy: you can be right or you can be married. I prefer you can be right or you can be in relationship, but you oftentimes can't be both, right? So you have to dial down the idea of being right, and you have to slow it all down, because rightness is not the goal. It's not the aim, at least. The aim is stay in relationship, stay in conflict, because the thing is, it's during conflict that intimacy is fed, right? When you get into conflict with somebody, it says, I give enough of a shit about you that I'm going to have a difficult conversation, right? Because you don't tend to take difficult feedback to someone that you don't care about. You do it maybe from a place of irritation, maybe not very kindly, right? But you generally take bids for connection to people, maybe even, angry and not very nice, from a place of hope. You do it because you hope if you show them your tender heart and you say, I've got all these feelings, that they'll witness them and go, oh, I see that. They are real and they are important to me. Defensiveness does the exact opposite. It says, do not show me your emotion. I fear that your emotion may reveal my inadequacy. It may reveal that you do not value me, and I am going to have to blow this whole thing up. So it's like there's a kind of reveal of a pre-existing truth, not truth in the objective sense, but a kind of truth that the defensive person already fears may be true, right? Because it's an old wound. So let me tell you how to build capacity to hear someone who is genuinely bringing you their feelings to be witnessed, because it's feelings that want to be witnessed, not have anything done about, not to be fixed or sort of tidied away, but just to be seen and to be reified into existence. Because when we're sort of witnessed as flesh bags of emotion, because that's what we are, we have our experience rendered real, and that is what produces intimacy. It's like you're with someone and they go, I see you, I know you, and even though I see you and I know you, I still want to be next to you in this moment. Like, the relationship is bigger than any conflict because I'm in service of the relationship. So how I do this with couples, and you can do this with couples or you can do it with friends, you could even try it with your kids, is I set a kind of listening task. Because oftentimes someone will bring negative or neutral even feedback. And I'm not talking about relationships here where the whole dynamic is about diminishing one person. That's a different conversation. I'm talking about your common or garden relationships where you just want to bring feedback to your partner, right? One person will bring feedback to their partner, and their partner will go into a kind of problem-solving mode. Well, they'll want to do something, and that's not necessarily what you should do in that moment. And that moment is not the right moment to meet your partner or your friend or your loved one and tell them exactly how you feel, right? That's later. When someone brings feedback to you, your sole job in that moment is to receive it. You receive it and you go, okay, I see that. Now, how I do that is with couples, I set a listening task of 10 minutes, sometimes 5, if the reactivity is incredibly high. Now, the job of the person giving the feedback is to keep it contained, right? You get 10 minutes, don't overrun. Make your 1 or at best 2 points, and that's it. So your job is restraint. The person receiving the feedback is to know you only have to listen to this for 10 minutes. You can do it. You've only got 1 or 2 points to hear. You're not going to have to listen to a 2-hour TED talk on why you are a wrong piece of shit. It's 10 minutes. It's a couple of points. Your job is to not react, don't defend, don't problem solve, and do not tell them at that point your feelings. Your job is to just hear it and notice, right? Notice afterwards, both of you. The giver of the feedback, I want you to notice potentially a kind of compulsion to over-explain, to hammer the point home, to bring up lots of different points to illustrate your one point, to over-function, because that is potentially your wound of expecting to not be understood, to not be heard, to be too much, and that compulsion to say more, do more constantly. That's kind of like over-managing the situation. The receiver, the defensive person, your job is to notice something potentially louder. You're going to notice that fast heat in the system, that compulsion to shut it down, and thoughts in that moment of, oh my God, they don't value me, they think I'm wrong, they're getting it wrong, that's not true, that's not fair, that's not right. And then potentially an old action tendency to just fuck it all off and leave. Because that's the wall coming up right there. Now, there's something to do with that, which is still externalizing, but it's externalizing in a different way, right? You need to slow down. You need to notice. You need to put the defensiveness outside of you, because the thing about defensiveness is it's so sort of soft wired to the self, because it's shame butting up against identity. What you need to do is get it out, put it in the middle of the room so you can circle it and kind of go, I notice I am feeling defensive. And that alone does something. It sort of changes the location of the defensiveness from being within to without. And then you can start to explore old stories connected to receiving feedback, old wounds that maybe are associated with feeling a bit defective or wrong or a failure or a letdown, old feelings of like emotional flooding that you try to run from because it's hard to sort of sit in conflict. Because it's conflict where intimacy is fed and nourished. It's like through conflict you get a bit of fire and heat. And it is through conflict that you witness one another's separateness. You look at your partner and you're like, oh my God, you're a separate person to me. You're a different kind of person to me. And yet, I still love you. That's where all the good stuff happens, in the separateness. So don't yearn for an easy ride, I think. Instead, yearn for a way to resolve conflict productively, kindly, and through that, know one another. Yeah, okay. Hope that's helped.